Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the program. Today, our 200th episode. I'm 90% sure it's our 200th episode. There might have been a really early episode that I mislabeled, but I'm just gonna call it 200. And what better way to usher in the 200th episode than to talk about how Clovis-First is just completely smashed? I've done a couple of videos about Clovis-First. If you don't know, really quickly, Clovis-First is the now dated model of how North and South America were peopled fairly recently, around I think around 13,000 BC, around there, 12,000 BC, somewhere around there is where they're saying it. Since then, a ton of evidence has come out that has essentially destroyed that paradigm and requires a rethinking of the paradigm because they weren't the first people. Very clearly, they weren't the first people. I've talked about other theories, people from Northeast Asia coming through the Bering Strait, and also people coming from the southern tip of South America. One of the theories I've talked about in the past were how there are certain populations let me pull up the map here, certain populations in South America that carry a genetic marker that is not related to the people in North America. Although there are people in South America, this is where people get confused. There are people who share genetic ancestry in South America and North America. That's definitely true. But there are people who are much older and they tend to live up in the Andes at high elevation. Although there are a couple of other places, I think in Argentina and Peru, they also unearth some stuff there that I'll get into later. Their genetics are more closely resembled to the people in Australasia and Australasia, and which is basically modern day New Guinea, Australia, etc. So if you look at the map here, it's just way further out west. And these people's genetics, their markers are found in certain people in South America. I'm kind of burying the lead here. What this video is about is Monteverde. Monteverde was a site excavated back in the 70s by Tom Dillahay, and it's marked here on the map. It's in southern Chile, about 30 miles from the coast. And this is probably one of the most significant smoking guns that have shattered Clovis-First. And it's been 43 years since they've done the initial excavations, and there are still people clinging on to Clovis-First. So let's just go through this pretty good article that breaks down all the reasons why this is the case, that Clovis-First isn't the reason, and a little closer look on Monteverde. Obviously, it's a well-dated archaeological site. There's been DNA analysis. There's been geological work. There's been, although they haven't found bones, they found everything but bones. They found human excrement. They found a bunch of stuff that are very clear that people were living there. In 1976, the dates were 15,000 years ago, but then it goes even further than that, as they did follow-up research and follow-up excavations. Some of the things they found in the initial excavation were remnants of 14,000-year-old huts, food scraps from megafauna, and wads of masticated seaweed, likely chewed for medicinal purposes. So this last part, chewed for medicinal purposes, this is, I think this is a detail that's worth examining further, because how did they know what was medicinal or not, right? Unless they had some sort of knowledge base, if they had some sort of traditional base, some sort of educational basis on which to do that. If they found masticated seaweed that was used for this purpose, that survived in this, by the way, Monteverde, it was found underneath a peat bog. And if you know anything about peat bogs, it tends to preserve all kinds of organic material that would otherwise just disappear into time and break down. So they found this stuff. It happened to be there. So that's pretty indicative that a lot of people were doing that practice. So what does it take for a population to start adopting those types of activities, that type of behavior? That's something that I think often gets overlooked. My point is that 15,000 years ago and beyond, even maybe even 20,000 years ago in this area, there was a culture there. And usually a culture is, in order for a culture to be at any level of advancement, at any level of development, there has to be some sort of stability. And there was humans there that were living a stable life and were developing traditions, and I guess you can call this medicinal science, really, really old medicinal science. And or you can call it superstition, whatever it is. They were doing something because it was prevalent among their society at the time. The preservation was so exceptional it cleared any doubt that humans had reached the New World by this time. So right away, just right then and there, it already shattered the Clovis-First model right there. But then there's more. So recent research on the site surroundings and deeper layers suggests humans inhabited this patch of South America as early as 19,000 years ago. So now the dates are going back even further. So again, underneath the peat bog, there was an excavated layer radiocarbon dated to about 14,000 years ago. Again, clear evidence of human inhabitants, including a child-sized footprint. They discovered the ruins of a forager campsite, which is about 120 yards, the size of a football field, next to a creek. So then you have a water source. You have all the in archaeology, in order to come to an agreement on where to excavate, you need to. It's almost like a probability and statistics problem. You want to spend your resources on the most likely site that you'll find something. So this place had all the boxes checked. There's water, there's local food, there's a food source, and it's pretty. I think it was about 25 kilometers from the coast. So again, you had this perfect storm of variables that again confirmed that there were people living there. And then when they did the excavation, lo and behold, they found some stuff like wooden foundations of a long rectangular building, subdivided into dozens of rooms containing food remains and clay-lined fire pits. That has to be some sort of human activity. I can't think of any other species that would have a somewhat organized living situation as humans would. Seemed to have been a communal residence divided into personal dwellings, almost like an apartment. 100 feet from these living quarters stood a wishbone-shaped structure that they found tools and butchered animal parts in, so it was probably a work area, which makes sense. In a community, there's going to be stuff like that found. There's also spun grass rope, wooden lances, animal hides, and human feces from the site. Again, because it was underneath the peat bog, all this was preserved. So also food scraps. People gathered at least 60 species of edible medicinal plants, including a variety of seaweed species from the coast. This is very interesting because, again, although the Amazon forest is pretty far away from this area, it's further north, it's interesting that they had this knowledge base of what was edible and what's not. If you guys have ever gone camping for a decent amount of time, and if you didn't bring food with you, if you had to, find your own food or whatever, I know very little of you have probably done that, but if you have, you would understand that a lot of stuff is not edible. There's a lot of stuff out there that's actually poisonous and can kill you. So for them to get to the level that there were 60 plants that were edible and didn't kill them. I mean, if you could get to that point, how many people had to die to get to that number? So they had, again, some sort of knowledge base. If you think about the Amazon has countless amounts of species of plants. A lot of them are still unknown to this day. And if you think about ayahuasca, for example, is the classic example. There's this random vine and these random leaves, and then you boil it together, and then it creates this shamanistic brew. I mean, if you think about trial and error, if you don't give them the benefit of the doubt, then that's if just do the math, how long would that take to get it right? So I think there's something more to the story here. I think there was some sort of, again, some either mother culture, some ancestor culture, something that had already done all that legwork. So we're talking really, really deep implications here. They hunted now extinct creatures such as paleocamelids. So if you think of a llama or like an alpaca, it's that type of animal. An elephant like gomphotheres. I think that's how you say it, gomphotheres. So the other smoking gun of Monteverde is the fact that it lacked Clovis points. So these are like these distinctive like points that they associate with the Clovis sites. Like in New Mexico, the main Clovis site, Clovis in Mexico, they had these points at this certain layer. So Monteverde, at a deeper layer, they didn't have any of these. So so they cannot be attributed to the Clovis people. They're completely different people. A lot of the scientists were trying to brush this off, saying, "Well, they made a mistake. These were all these are miscalculations. They have to do the excavation again. There's all these kinds of excuses." But it was well preserved because the peat. But you can't really argue with the peat bog thing because the peat bog is it's like a time capsule. It's as close to a natural time capsule as you can get. It was meticulously excavated. I mean, it's been 46 years of ongoing excavation on and off. Analyzed with state-of-the-art methods. So basically, non-Clovis people reached South America by at least 14,000 years ago. So how did they get there? So then you start getting that makes way for these theories, such as people started boating and they made their way to the southern tip somehow. The sea levels were lower, so there would be more islands dotting the Pacific. So it would be, again, you would have this idea of intervisibility where you can just island hop all the way to South America. And I would love to see studies done on this because with satellite images, you can see that there are definitely some shallower land masses underneath the water here. And I would love to see if someone could undertake some sort of marine archaeological expedition just to map out what would have been above water at this time. But one thing that I think is worth mentioning is Easter Island, which is here next to the Pitcairn Islands. If you go west from northern Chile all the way here, you have this remote island, Easter Island. And they also had huge megalithic structures, these blocks, very similar to those found in Peru and other parts of South America. These huge blocks, Machu Picchu, very similar to their archaeology. Brian Forrester, if you guys know who Brian Forrester is, go ahead and you. I'll have a link to his channel in the description, but you should definitely check out his channel. He does a lot of the groundwork here, and he takes great photos. He has video, he has drone footage, he has all kinds of photographic and visual evidence to where you can really see how compelling this whole theory is. Because why would there be a remote island with very, very similar architecture and to people in Peru and other parts of South America? So again, how would they get there? Well, for sure they're not going through the Bering Strait, right? That doesn't make sense. They wouldn't go down the Bering Strait, make a quick pivot to Easter Island and then go to South America. It doesn't make any sense. So the only other way is through this idea of intervisibility, island hopping. And I think what Easter Island is, and it's been it's clear that Easter Island was a lot bigger when the sea level was lower. There was a quarry that's now underwater where the blocks came from. So if Easter Island is a remnant of a whole chain of islands, then that probably, if you just go by statistics, that means there are probably other islands that just didn't make it, that they're now completely submerged. And I think if you go all the way to Australasia, if you go to that DNA evidence I was telling you about, that DNA marker, that mystery of why these people have this marker, this genetic marker of the people here, then you can kind of use your imagination, and it doesn't take much. It's not much of a stretch to imagine that, okay, these people who already come from an island type of area. Even when Sundaland was here, there were still networks of islands. Like New Zealand was never connected to Australia, right? These people already had the navigational skills. So it's not out of the question for them to have made it all the way here, especially if there was a network of islands. Anyway, so since Monteverde, there's been a bunch of other pre-Clovis sites that have been reported between 13,000 to 15,000 years old. North America has 10 of them. South America only has 3, which is Monteverde, Huaca Prieta in Peru, and Arroyo Seco in Argentina. So it's difficult to say who and how widespread the Monteverde people were, but they definitely weren't Clovis. That's for sure. So in 1988, Nature, they published more artifacts from Monteverde in a deeper layer dated to 30,000 years ago. So now we're doubling the age here. They found 3 clay-line burned areas, 6 stones that appear to have been shaped into tools. That's pretty compelling. That's worth looking further into. That's not something you just say is an anomaly and is some sort of outlier and not look into it further. You definitely have to look into it further. That's a green light to go further into that research. 2013, 6 years ago, Dillehay returned to the site, led the team that dug 80 probes and test pits to land around Monteverde, identified 12 discrete spots with signs of a campfire, charcoal, ash, burn clay, stone tools, and animal bones. These were dated to 14,500 and 19,000 years ago. So again, there's a lot here. If we go to that 30,000 year date, that's fine, because the people, the evidence is that at least maybe not a full-fledged seagoing vessel, but there were boats that could hug the coast and island hop back 43,000 years, and those were what the ancient Austronesians were using. So again, the numbers are consistent when you look at a southern entrance, an earlier entrance. Now, before I end the video, I'm not saying that the people from Northeast, the Proto-Siberians, I did a whole episode on migrations from the Bering Strait, when the Bering Strait wasn't a strait, when it was a land bridge. And this migration definitely did happen. It's just not the first. So anyway, let me know what you guys think about this. Thank you for supporting me through 200 episodes and beyond. It's been a pleasure doing all this stuff. I will continue to do all this stuff. I've said it a bunch of times. I'm kind of going through a transitionary phase in my life. I'm getting all this. I'm not going to be here pretty soon. I'm going to be moving to another area. And once I get settled in, I'm going to have a new studio, and I'll hopefully launch the podcast sometime after that. I don't have a hard date. I'm also going to be on the Grimerica podcast sometime when that happens. I've been talking to Darren about it, and basically it's just up to me when I want to go on. So I'll keep him posted on that. And just leave some, continue leaving comments. I think you guys are awesome. A lot of you guys who have stuck with me since a year and a half ago when I started this channel. I did not forget about you guys. I think you guys are awesome. The support has always been good. Very minimal amount of negativity, if at all. So please keep supporting, share the channel. I'm very pleased with the growth, and hopefully this time next year we'll hit 3,000, right? I'm at 1,500 subscribers. Hopefully we get to 3,000. Another thing is I'm going to start exclusively recording episodes on BitChute. So if you guys don't have BitChute yet, please check it out. I think that's the future of a platform that'll rival YouTube, and I'm going to do a lot more content on there, exclusively on there in the future. Not right now, but in the future. And so go ahead and share all the links. If you want to get at me, I've had a couple people hit me up for interviews. The best way to reach me for interviews is through Twitter. So if you can't send me a DM, just tweet at me and say, hey, can you follow me? I want to direct message you about an interview. Go ahead and do that, and that's the best way to reach me. Okay? All right. Thank you for making the first 200 episodes a really pleasurable experience, and here's to another 200.